Alright, so today I want to show you my ball python hatchlings that I'm going to have for sale at the upcoming reptile show. It's coming up in less than a week, pretty much my last show of the year, and that is the Colorado Springs Repticon coming up on December 7th and 8th, 2019. And even if you don't make the show, you can at least see what I actually produced this year as far as ball python hatchlings. I had a pretty good year, produced some interesting snakes. I'm going to show you what I have left that's going to be at the show. I produced about 100 hatchlings. I have maybe about 50 hatchlings left. I'm just going to go through them real quick one by one so you can see what I'm going to have for sale at the show. And if you're interested in something, I would suggest getting there in the front of the line, VIP, on the very first day, which is Saturday. I know some people kind of show up later on. Sometimes people miss out on their snakes, and I don't really reserve them or hold them. Pretty much the first one that shows up with the cash in hand gets to buy that snake. Don't really like to hold snakes. Although if you actually come to the show and you pay for that snake, I'll hold it at the show till the end of the day. If you want to do that, I'll just put a little hold sticker on the snake and then hold it, so when you're ready to go home, you can actually come by, pick up the snake on your way out. And another interesting thing too is they actually asked me if I was going to do a presentation at the show. This is actually the first time I've ever done a talk at one of these reptile shows. They scheduled me in for 4 p.m. on Saturday to do a quick little talk, anywhere from between 15 minutes and 45 minutes. Pretty much the last talk of the day, which I don't really, not really feeling rushed, and I don't have to pack up on the first day because they have security at these shows. I can just leave it set up. So I'm pretty much free just to talk for, no pressure at all. I'm probably going to do a topic on the banana/coral glow gene and the interesting anomaly where you have the female makers and the male makers. Pretty interesting topic. I'll probably talk for about 15 or 20 minutes and then open it up to questions, and you can pretty much ask me whatever you want if you're going to be at the show and watch me do my little presentation. Should be an interesting time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some of these snakes that are actually going to be at the show and see if you're interested in any of them. Maybe essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually sell them at the show. Whatever doesn't sell at the show, I'm going to list over on Morph Market. So pretty much right after the show, I'll do maybe another couple videos and slowly post several snakes at a time over on Morph Market. And then probably what I'll do is I'll ship out on Mondays, because the post office that I ship from, it's actually a FedEx center down in Denver. It's about an hour away. So it's like a 2-hour round trip to actually get down there. So probably what I'll do is after the show is I'll start selling on Morph Market. And then if you actually buy a snake over there, I'll pretty much just box every one of the snakes up early Monday or maybe late afternoon Monday and bring them down to FedEx and then ship them out overnight. You can get them early Tuesday. So let's jump in and check out some snakes. Alright, so I'm actually going to start from the oldest, the ones that hatched out the first, and go to the youngest. That's pretty much the order I'm going to go into. And this is actually a normal 100% het pied male. This guy's name is Echo, doing really good, looking really beefy. You can see some pretty good pied markers on his belly. Really cool looking belly. Really neat looking snake. He's definitely 100% het pied. He came from a fire pied male, so didn't get the fire gene, but got the pied gene. Just one copy of the pied gene, so you can't tell that it's het pied really, but you know from the breeding for sure this is 100% het pied. Alright, so this snake we named Flicker, and Flicker is a fire 100% het pied male. Came from the same clutch as the other one, and you can definitely tell the fire gene is in there. The pattern's broken up quite a bit, and if you actually breed two fires together, you get a super fire, which is an all-white snake with black eyes, and usually the super fires have a little bit of yellow coming right down the top. Really beautiful snakes. Alright, so we named this one Sweetie, and this one is just a normal female, no other genes in the mix, and she's getting nice and big and beefy, looking really good. These are really in high demand for breeders because you can breed like a bamboo to this, you get 50% bamboos, and usually just a normal female is really inexpensive. Looking really good. That's what her belly looks like. This is a really good looking snake. Really looking big too. So this one we named Yoda. This is a bamboo ball python, really reduced pattern. This is possible pastel. I'm still kind of on the fence whether this is pastel or not. It's looking more like it does have pastel in it, but I'm just gonna sell it as a straight bamboo. Usually it's really hard to tell when they're young, when they have pastel, and then as they age, the yellow really comes out. I'm thinking the yellow is really starting to come out on this one, and it looks like it does have pastel in there, but I'm not 100% sure that it actually does, so I'm just gonna sell it as a regular bamboo. This one's name is Yoda. Everybody wants to buy Yoda. It's gonna be at the show if you're interested in Yoda. This one we named Pepper, and Pepper is a female normal, no other genes in the mix, and this is probably the least expensive snake that you're gonna find. They have really interesting bellies, these normals, and it's kind of nice to have normals just to kind of get a gauge as far as what a wild type, normal, classic ball python looks like without any other genes in the mix. This one we named Fluffy, and Fluffy is a male, normal, no other genes in the mix. And this one would make probably the perfect pet if you're looking for the least expensive ball python. A male normal is where it's at. These make fantastic pets. This one, if you take a look at the belly, pretty much the typical normal belly pattern, no other genes at all in the mix on this one. This one we named Yuki. Yuki is a male lesser ball python, and a lesser is codominant. If you actually breed two lessers together, you get a super lesser, which is an all-white snake with blue eyes. It's in the blue-eyed leucistic complex. You can also breed it with bamboo or Mojave or anything in the BEL complex and get that all-white snake with blue eyes. Really good looking snake. So this one we named Boomer, and Boomer is another male normal, no other genes in the mix. These normals are getting really beefy. I'm gonna have to actually probably have to separate some of my male and female rats so I don't produce so many rats, because these guys have really been pounding the rats, eating up a lot of the stuff. And you know, after I sell like 50 snakes, that's like probably 200 less rodents that I need a month. So I'm definitely gonna have to pare back my pairings on my rats. These guys are looking really big and beefy. So this one we named Buttons. This is another male normal, and the interesting thing about these is they're going to be really inexpensive at the shows, but if you actually, you know, buy them online, it's another problem. As a matter of fact, I shipped out one snake and it was like $85 for shipping, which is pretty much what these snakes would sell for. So it's almost double the price if you're actually buying them on the internet. It's really good to actually go to the shows to buy some of these low-end snakes. So this one we named Cupcake, and Cupcake is a male. I should have had male names and female names. I didn't really sort them out when I was initially doing the males and the females. So I guess you could have a male named Cupcake, which is kind of interesting. This one's actually a scaleless head. If you look at the tip of the nose right on top of the head, it actually has just a few scales missing right from the top of the head. If you actually breed two of these together, you actually will get a completely scaleless ball python, which currently they're selling still for thousands of dollars. Not a whole lot of people are really into and actually have been in the project long enough to get the completely scaleless ball pythons. It's pretty new project. When I first started in the project, these were selling for about $1,500, and you know, they've come down. I don't really like to quote prices here, but you know, these are probably well, you'll actually see at the show. It's just a few $100 maybe for something like this. Not as expensive as they used to be. So this one we named Ziggy, and Ziggy is another male scaleless head. And if you look at the scales on the head on this one, doesn't quite have the amount of scales missing from the head. It's definitely a scaleless head. And some of them have more scales missing, some of them don't have quite as many. The interesting thing I find about scaleless heads is a lot of times, even if you just do one copy of the gene instead of a completely scaleless snake, you just have a scaleless head. A lot of times the scaleless heads, it seems like it kind of thins out some of the scales on the snake, and the colors it seems like they're a lot brighter just on the scaleless head. I actually have a scaleless head lesser that I'm holding back, and I think it's probably one of my brightest one of my brightest lessers, and I think it's due to the scaleless head gene. All right, so this is Bubbles. Bubbles is a female pinstripe, 100% het desert ghost. And the pinstripes are really awesome. You actually breed pinstripe to something else. 50% of the offspring come out pinstripe. But this actually also has one copy of the recessive desert ghost gene. And with the desert ghost, you actually get, you need 2 copies of the genes to see a visual. And let me tell you, the visual desert ghosts are actually quite impressive. Probably one of the most impressive morphs that are pretty much underrated and undiscovered in the ball python industry today. I'm really working a lot with the desert ghosts, trying to bring a lot of them to the shows to show people the actual potential of how awesome the desert ghost is. Here's another one from the same clutch. This one actually got the pinstripe gene as well, but this one is actually a male instead of a female. This is a male pinstripe, 100% het desert ghost. And the funny thing is about pinstripe, most people say, you know, at the very beginning, people were saying that it is actually a dominant mutation where you actually can't get a super. But lately, I've actually went over to Morph Market and they've actually have some super pinstripes listed over on Morph Market. And the super pinstripe, if it actually exists, as far as what I'm seeing, it looks almost exactly like a pinstripe. And then if you actually had the super, everything you breed it to would all be, you know, all the hatchlings from that clutch would all be pinstripes. And I haven't actually known anyone to produce a super pinstripe. It'd be kind of an interesting project to work on and prove out that, you know, that the pinstripe is actually co-dominant instead of dominant. So here's another one from that same clutch. This is actually a pastel het desert ghost female. So it's 100% het desert ghost. We know because the parent was a visual desert ghost, the male was, and I'm pretty sure on this clutch it was actually a lemon blast female that I actually bred it to. So some actually got the pinstripe, some got the pastel, like this one's a pastel, didn't get the pinstripe, and some of them actually got 2 copies where you actually have a super blast. I actually have a super blast het desert ghost. And let me tell you, if you actually prove this, actually breed this out and take a look at that belly, how awesome that is. That is really awesome. If you actually get a visual pastel desert ghost, that is one of the most impressive desert ghost combos. All right, so this one we named Raven, and Raven is a male lemon blast, 100% het desert ghost. And this one actually has the pastel gene and the pinstripe gene. As a matter of fact, my male that I actually bred to the lemon blast that this came from was a pastel desert ghost male. It was a visual. And some people were saying that that looked kind of like it had enchi in it. And some people were actually saying some of these lemon blasts kind of look like maybe they have some enchi in it, which is possible. And I actually haven't produced a normal looking reduced pattern snake to where I know for 100% sure that that snake has enchi in it. So I'm selling this as a lemon blast, although, you know, on some of these it could potentially have enchi in the mix. And until I actually produce a normal that has a reduced pattern that looks like an enchi, I'm just gonna kind of ignore that might be in there and just sell these as lemon blasts, 100% het desert ghost. All right, so take a look at this one. This is Chewy, which is a male super blast, 100% het desert ghost. So the super blast is actually a super pastel pinstripe. So it has 2 copies of the pastel gene. So everything that this breeds to will actually be a pastel. It'll throw a pastel offspring on every single baby because it has 2 copies. And the funny thing is once you have 2 copies, it kind of fades everything out. The head gets faded, kind of looks muddy, but you breed it out and sure enough, everything that it breeds to will be a pastel. If you actually breed this to another pastel, it's like 50% of the babies are pastel, 50% are super pastel. And it's really powerful because it has 1 copy of the desert ghost gene. And you know my favorite desert ghost is the pastel desert ghost. This is a really powerful breeder. All right, so this one we named Slinky, and Slinky is a male, 100% het pied, 50% het caramel albino. So the female that this was bred to was 100% het caramel albino. So there's a 50% chance that this could actually have 1 copy of the caramel albino gene. And it was actually a visual pied that was one of the parents, so we know it's 100% het pied. You can see really strong pied markers right down by the tail. And the interesting thing is I think I have some hidden genes kind of floating around in my collection. Some people said that, you know, some of these darker normals might be blackhead, which is kind of interesting if I actually had blackhead. I think I might have like blackhead or enchy or granite, some of these genes that I'm not 100% sure that I actually have them in here because I haven't proved them out to be 100%, but some people say that this might be, you know, a blackhead, or some of these might have some extra genes floating around in the mix. But this one I'm just basically selling, I'd probably price it just as a normal 100% het pied male. All right, so this one is really interesting. This is a bamboo ball python. We named this one Thor. And it's kind of interesting because it seemed like all the female bamboos sold first and I ended up with all the males. And as a matter of fact, if I was actually doing a breeding project and was getting into bamboos, what I would actually do is I would buy a male first, because keep in mind a male can breed several females. You can actually pick up some normal females really cheap, breed this to them, and then 50% of the babies would all come out bamboos. And you could actually, if you picked up a male the first year, you could actually breed it the following year and then produce your own females. Where if you actually bought a female, you'd be sitting on that for 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 years before you could actually breed it. So it's kind of interesting. I would have thought the males would have sold a lot faster than the females. So here's another one. This one we named Sparky. Sparky is another bamboo ball python male. And usually on the bamboos, the bellies are completely clear, no pattern. And sometimes they can have a lot of pattern up on the top. Sometimes it can be really reduced. Really just depends on the individual. It doesn't really depend on the line. Bobby has thrown some really reduced bamboo ball pythons in some of his hatchlings. These are all from Bobby. So this one we named Porky, and Porky is a female normal, no other genes in the mix at all. And the interesting thing about this is we named it Porky, and then it was really picky and refused to eat, and it's kind of lagging behind all the other snakes of the same age. So it's a little bit smaller, but is doing really well now. All right, so take a look at this beauty. This is a spider ball python, and this is actually, we named this one Cobra, and Cobra is actually 100% het pied, 50% het caramel albino. And the interesting thing about this is some people kind of shy away from the spiders because of the head wobble, but I would say most of my spiders that I produced this year don't really have hardly any head wobble. There's one that has a little bit, but I'd say in most of these, it's no problem at all. The head is really stable, really good looking snake. All right, so take a look at this big old snake. This is Terminator, a really big spider ball python. Came from the same clutch. It's 100% het pied, 50% het caramel albino. Really good looking snake. And the interesting thing about these spiders is some of them have more or less white coming up the sides. And you really can't tell any pied markers because if you have other genes in the mix, it really masks the pied markers. But we know 100% sure this actually came from a visual pied. All right, so here's another one. We call this one Sunshine, another male spider, 100% het pied, 50% het caramel albino. And you can definitely see on this one, there is a lot more white coming up on the sides of this spider. Really beautiful snake. All right, so here's another one from the same clutch. We named this one Electra. It is a male, 100% het pied, 50% het caramel albino. This one didn't get the spider gene. It's pretty much the brother of the other ones. You can definitely tell that it has track marks along the belly from the het pied. Really good looking snake. All right, so this one we named Fang. This is probably my favorite bamboo ball python of the whole year. This is actually a male. I don't think I have any female bamboos left, but just take a look at the pattern and the color and the intensity of the pattern on this. I was actually surprised this didn't sell at the last show. I think this is probably one of the most striking bamboos that I produced all season. All right, so we named this one Pee-wee. This is a beautiful coral glow. Take a look at that. That is stunning. And it's funny, as these snakes get older, the coral glows, essentially what happens is they kind of lose the orange and kind of this bluish gray in between, and they kind of turn into like a two-tone yellow and get a lot more freckles. You can see the freckles are starting to come in just a little bit. They're essentially usually born with no freckles at all, and the older they get, the more freckles they have. This is actually a male, 100% het pied. No, actually it's a 50% het pied because the father was 100% het pied, so there's a 50% chance this could have the het pied gene, but you really can't tell just from the color or pattern that it actually is het pied. Really beautiful looking snake. This one's actually a male maker because the father was a male. So if you actually breed this to something else, all the coral glow offspring will be males. All right, so this one we named Happy, and Happy is a female 50% het pied. And sometimes if it's 50% het pied, you can actually look at the belly tracks and kind of get an idea if it's het pied or not. And this one, even though it has a lot of black coming up along the bellies, it doesn't really have strong het pied markers. Usually in het pied, what you'll see is like a little marker drawn on either side of the belly, right at the base of the tail, and you really don't see it on this one, so it's hard to tell on this one. It could be het pied or maybe not, 50% chance. Really good looking snake. All right, so we named this one Elvis, and after we actually named this Elvis, we found out it was a female. So this is probably the only female Elvis that you will ever meet. And Elvis is actually a female normal 50% het pied. If we kind of look at the belly tracks on this one, maybe not. It's just kind of hard to tell. Sometimes it's really obvious if you have those het pied markers down by the tail, and then you can kind of get an idea. If someone actually, is thinking about buying one of these, I usually point them in the direction of what they're going to do. If they kind of want to gamble on the het pied, sometimes we can kind of look at the bellies, and I can give them something that I think might have a better odds of actually being het pied. So this one is named Destroyer, and Destroyer is a female 50% het pied. The interesting thing on this one, it's like a little bit more yellow in the pattern and a little bit more black in the blacks. Really kind of an interesting normal. I don't think there's any other genes in the mix. This one's 50% het pied. I'd say this one might have a good chance to be het pied. You can kind of see the little markers right down by the tail. Looking pretty good for a possible het pied. So this one we named, whoa, oh, this one's a little snapper. This one, I just woke him up, I think. This one is Brownie. Brownie is a female, 50% het pied. I just actually fed him yesterday, and I actually fed him some live little rat crawlers, and I think that's why she's a little fired up. She's like, give me another rat. Oh, I definitely don't want to take a bite from this one. This one, actually, I kind of wanted to check her tail to see her tail is. Let's see if I can kind of hold her head a little bit. And this one, I'd say, doesn't really have strong het pied markers. That girl is fired up. So this one we named Apollo, and Apollo is another coral glow, really beautiful. Not quite as many spots as the other one. And it's kind of interesting that this particular line of coral glow has really beautiful hatchlings. These are probably the most stunning hatchlings that I've ever seen out of any line of coral glow. Unfortunately, as they get older, it doesn't really look the same as when they're young. And this one is another male, 50% het pied. You really can't tell the pied markers on any of these coral glows. As a matter of fact, even if they had, other genes like pastel in the mix, the coral glow is so visually dominant, sometimes it's really hard to tell what's in there. Really beautiful snakes, though. So we named this one Magnum, another coral glow male, 50% het pied. This one's doing really well. Look at how beefy this is compared to the size of the head. You can definitely tell this guy has been eating really good. You can almost tell their age from the size of the head. And if the head looks a little bit smaller compared to the body, that's because it's kind of a young snake and it's been eating really well. You can definitely tell this guy has been doing really good. So we named this one Pluto, and Pluto is a male 50% het pied, looking really good. Really a dark normal, really dark in the colors, and really dark in the black, and kind of dark even in the colored part of the alien heads. And you can definitely tell, you know, 50% het pied. Take a look at these lines down the belly. It looks like someone took a marker, drew down the sides of the belly. I can almost guarantee that this one, I could probably sell this as 100% het pied, even though from the breeding, we know it's 50% het pied. So here is Luna, and Luna is a female 50% het pied. It's kind of interesting how these normals really change from one snake to the other. This one is a really golden color. It's really kind of interesting. And I also found it's kind of interesting on some of my other snakes. I actually produced some triple hets, and you can kind of see some of this white coming up around the alien heads. A lot of people are saying that is an indicator for het clown, even though I don't think this one's het clown, but you can really see the white coming around the alien heads. I'm not sure that is 100% guaranteed of a marker for your het clowns. If we kind of look at the belly on this one, 50% het pied, I'd say you can't really tell if this one is het pied or not. All right, so this one we named Stormy, and Stormy has snapped at more people than any of my snakes. I don't know, usually coral glows are really mellow, and for some reason, this one is really fired up all the time. It really needs to be handled quite a bit. You can tame them down a lot, but I really haven't worked with them a lot. And this one probably bit me 3 or 4 times. It's getting a little bit better with age, and you just have to kind of work with them and build that confidence. This is another coral glow, 50% het pied, and this is a male maker. So this is a male. Everything that it breeds to, and this will actually produce all male coral glow offspring. All right, so take a look at this beautiful pinstripe. This is Frosty, and Frosty is not like my other pinstripes. This one was actually, I actually bred it to a visual albino pied, which is a double recessive. So this actually has 1 copy of the albino, 1 copy of the pied gene, even though you can't tell. And you definitely can't tell from the belly that it's het pied or not because of the pinstripe. Really beautiful snake. This is a male, and if you actually bred this to another, say for example, if you had another double het, I have quite a few double hets that are het albino, het pied, you'd end up with pinstripes, pinstripe pieds, you'd end up with albino pinstripes, albino pinstripe pieds, you get a whole bunch of stuff. You'll get albino pieds, a really powerful breeder if you start breeding it to another double het that is double het for albino and pied. So this one's from the same clutch. This one we named Snuggles, and Snuggles is a normal male, but it's double het for albino and pied. And I can almost guarantee that if you look at the tail on this one, you could probably see the tracks right down the belly for the het pied. Really strong tracks, like someone took a Sharpie and drew right down the belly. That is really what you want to see if you're looking for the het pied. Really beautiful snake. And I'd say this guy could probably breed next year. He's got some decent size to them. Males only have to be about 500 grams. All right, so take a look at this chunky old pinstripe. This is actually, we named this one Bones. This is a female pinstripe, double het albino pied. Really beautiful snake, looking really big and beefy. Probably one of my biggest hatchlings. I can't believe how big this girl is. And it's kind of funny because I just kind of throw food in there. Don't really even realize how big they are until I start taking them out and showing them off. This is a really good looking snake. All right, so we named this one Bigfoot, and Bigfoot is a normal female, 100% het pied, 100% het albino, double het, and you can definitely tell, we'll take a look at the belly on this one, and you can definitely tell that this one is het pied by the belly markers. And of course we know from the breeding, this one's not quite as big as the last one, still has a really good start. Keep in mind, this is one of my youngest hatchlings, and it's kind of interesting because sometimes I'll start feeding from the bottom and won't get all the way to the top of the rack. It seems like these towards the bottom maybe get a few more meals than some of my other ones. So here's another double het albino pied female. This one we named Peekaboo, looking really big and beefy. This one, I can't even believe how big this one is. It's kind of interesting. Almost has what looks kind of like a reduced pattern. Not quite as many alien heads on this one, but this one wasn't from my Desert Ghost, so I don't know how this one could have got inchy in it. You know, I think it's just kind of a reduced pattern normal. It's interesting how the normals can kind of vary. And we definitely know this is 100% het pied. And if you look at the tail, you really can't see the het pied markers that strong as some of my other ones. You can kind of see on some of them, but it's not really guaranteed that you'll actually see those markers on a lot of the het pieds. All right, so here's another beautiful pinstripe. This one we named Meatball, and Meatball is a pinstripe, 100% het albino, 100% het pied, double het, looking really big and beefy. I'm thinking this guy is probably almost 500 grams. You could probably breed him right now. So here's another one. This is Titan. Titan is a male, 100% het albino, 100% het pied. It's kind of interesting on all these double hets. It looks like the pattern is slightly reduced. It's kind of interesting. I think it might be an effect of the double het on the effect of the normal pattern. All right, so this is Goldie, and Goldie is a really beautiful pinstripe, probably one of my most impressive, high contrast, brightest pinstripes in my whole collection. Look at how beautiful that snake is. Goldie is actually a female pinstripe, 100% het Desert Ghost. All right, so this one we named Spot, and Spot is a pastel pinstripe, also known as a lemon blast. It's also 100% het Desert Ghost, and this one, I think, out of any of my possible Enchi combos, I think this one might have maybe a little bit of Enchi in it. You can see the pattern is really reduced. The yellow's popping out a little bit more, and the head is a little bit lighter than a lot of my lemon blasts. I would say this one has a good chance maybe of having that kind of hidden Enchi floating around in my collection, but I'm just going to sell it as a regular lemon blast, 100% het Desert Ghost. All right, so we named this one Fluffy, and Fluffy is a pastel, 100% het Desert Ghost male. This is a male, looking really good, and it's kind of interesting on this one. It almost looks like the pattern is reduced a little. Sometimes, you know, it's not really necessarily the Enchi, possible Enchi floating around. A lot of times, just with the pastel, you can have an extremely reduced pattern, so you really can't tell on that one at all. But this is what the bottom looks like. Really cool looking snake. All right, so I'm going to tease you with one of the ones I'm not going to bring to the show. One of my holdbacks. Look at how beautiful this one is. And this one is a big snapper. This one always bites me. I just can't seem to tame this one down. This is a female, super pastel, 100% het Desert Ghost that we named Spock. I got another name kind of mixed up. I named him Spock and then found out it was a female. And then I was kind of thinking about, you know, expanding a little bit. I just thought it was, I've never actually produced a super pastel, and this one is super bright, looking really good. And this one's just kind of like a little tiger biting me and snapping everything. If you take a look at the belly's pretty clear on this one, and it doesn't really, it seems like it's afraid of me, and it's really hard to actually get to eat frozen thawed. This one is pretty much a live only for me. Eats live really well. Look at how big and beefy it is. So far has not eaten a single frozen thawed. All right, so I want to show you one more that I'm actually not going to have at the show. I'm actually going to hold this one back. This is Crusher, who is a lesser scaleless head. I'm actually going to probably breed this next year and see if I can get lesser scaleless head into something else. Maybe start, you know, making some combos with the lesser scaleless head combos. And if my females are ready, I might actually try to breed this to one of my scaleless head females and try to get a completely scaleless ball python with lesser in it. And then probably what I'll do is eventually I'll unload some of these, you know, single gene scaleless heads as I progress my scaleless head project. All right, so it is time for the question of the day. And Brandy Cake asks, Do you ever have snakes that grab the rodent and then later don't eat them? And that is a very good question. I'd say it's really tricky feeding snakes, because if you watch them really closely, essentially what they do, especially if you're feeding like a fresh killed or a frozen thawed, what you do is you feed them to the snake, and the snake grabs that rodent and kind of wraps around it and is almost paralyzed for like a minute or two, kind of goes into this trance where it just kind of grabs the rodent and then freezes. And then after a little bit of time, usually a minute or two, that snake really relaxes, kind of lets go of the rodent, and it starts looking around. And it's at this point where you really need to have your snakes all alone, pretty much in isolation, where you're not, checking on them or hovering above them, because that is when you can really distract the snake and it won't go back to the rodent. So what you really need to do is you need to feed your snakes and then kind of leave them alone for maybe 5 or 10 minutes and then go back and check on them. You really want them to be completely isolated, alone, so you don't really disrupt them. And I find these gray tubs behind me, essentially what I do is I just kind of sneak the rodent right in there, and I'd say it's extremely rare where I'll actually have a rodent that just really just ignores it. And usually the only time that a snake really ignores the rodent is if I actually feed him a rodent that is too big, maybe an oversized rodent that's too big for the snake to eat. A lot of times they'll grab it and then just let it go and won't eat it. And it's only happened really if I feed him an oversized rodent that's too big. So that is pretty much it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.